But somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
And we're back.
Wow, she started the podcast.
With the booty.
And the beast. Here we are. Guests this week, Natalie Joy. So you might be like, hey, who is this gal? She's intelligent. She's well-spoken. She's an Olympic weightlifter.
Yes.
And by me, she wasn't in the Olympics. She trained at the Olympic training facility. She holds, was it like 12 state titles?
Yeah, that's
was
what
it
13,
12, 13, something crazy like that. When it comes
She's
to
a big deal.
When it comes to Olympic lifting, has over 100,000 followers on Instagram. And honestly, like for me, this was a really good podcast to educate me. And I asked a question. You guys will see it, like an ignorant question, because I don't know shit about it. I don't. Outside of bodybuilding, I don't know much about powerlifting. I don't know a lot about strongman. I know shit about CrossFit, and I know absolutely shit about Olympic lifting. So it was awesome to have somebody that experiences fitness in a different way than we do.
Yep, definitely.
To, obviously reach the same kind of end result. Like we lift to be healthy and to look good. She lifts to be healthy and to look good, and she
but
enjoys
also be competitive.
Yeah, competitive. So
I think I love the aspects of like obviously bodybuilding. I've done it. I love it. But there's something really cool about like the actual competitions are more about like what you can do. So I like have a huge respect to like obviously I respect bodybuilding because there's a long process with it. I love the process of it. But there's something about like getting on a stage and doing a lift.
Well, I mean, there's no subjectivity in what she does.
Exactly.
Unless
either you do it or you don't.
Well, slightly. I shouldn't say that because if there's something wrong, I believe in their form or something like that, a judge can make that
of
call. Of
course.
Again, I don't know how the score goes,
but there's multiple judges and like all of that go into that too. So it's still performance based.
Yeah, and so how
cool.
I know Natalie and you know Natalie through me is one of my best friends from professional wrestling, Ari Daivari, who was with the WWE. Now he's with All Elite Wrestling. It's his girlfriend. But she's not the girlfriend of Ari Daivari. She is Natalie Joy, like the accomplished veteran of the Olympic lifting world. Now, she currently lives in Vegas where they live. She coaches. She plans on doing competitions again, which is really cool. And I think it's really cool because, like, obviously you being a female and we traditionally, and I mentioned this on the interview with her, is like traditionally weightlifting, bodybuilding, powerlifting is just like a boys' world, right? Like it's like you.
But it's more, and like we touched this too. It's more and more female driven, and it's cool to see the like sway over to the women's side of the world. And it's fun.
So if you're looking to be, maybe you're a bodybuilder and looking to change it up and do something different, I think this is a nice eye-opening conversation. If you're somebody who just wants to be healthier, here's a good conversation about an alternative to what I do, to what Danielle does. And we're going to continue to try to do that. Like, I want to get people from the CrossFit world on here. I want to get people from strongman and powerlifting, and not just like bodybuilding, although that's, I'm born and bred in that world of bodybuilding. We have this business. We have the Fitbuilders business, which was born and bred in the world of bodybuilding. But I'm fascinated more and more by different realms of fitness.
For sure.
Because it's not just bodybuilding.
I think I tiptoed more into different areas of fitness than you have.
Well, because I believe in monogamy. So I don't go outside the realm of things. I mean, so that's all you need to know about my wife. And maybe I need to hire a private investigator.
When I first got
tiptoeing
into
outside the world.
Fitness, I didn't start in bodybuilding though. I started in endurance training and I started in marathons and all those things. I did the fitness classes. I did like the different. I looked into CrossFit. I didn't just dive into bodybuilding and stay there. Like I had different realms that I was in to begin with.
Well, so, I hope you dove into this marriage and staying there, and you're not. I am staying. Hey, let's tiptoe and see what else is out there. I'm kidding. Anyway, we could talk all day, but I honestly I thought this was a really cool conversation, and as we ended the recording, I even said to Danielle, I was like, "This was good for me." Like most times we have guests on here, I know their background, I know where they come from, what they represent, what they strive to be and do, and honestly, I didn't know a whole lot about Natalie outside the fact, like, obviously conversations with her in her home. And a couple of years ago, we were on the boat with them on Lake Minnetonka, and like, great girl, awesome for Aria. I'm happy for them. But we kind of scratched the surface on her competition career, but didn't really, for a long time, I thought she was a power lifter. Like, that's what I thought she was.
I didn't know there was a difference between the two until recently. And that's no disrespect. It's just ignorance on my side, you know? So it's just, like Desi, my sister, is in powerlifting. I've learned a little bit about that. Still don't know much at all. I know the basic lifts and that's about it. But obviously, like, weightlifting is a whole different world. Yeah. So
it's a very awesome. Different world. It takes a lot of talent. I will be honest, I would need a lot of training and coaching to do it correctly, because I think I'm so trained to lift the way we lift as bodybuilders. Yep. Like 3 sets of 10, like that's what I do. But to have to jerk quickly, snatch quickly above your chest, above your head, without hurting yourself, God forbid. And the fact that it's drug-free, whew,
it's cool.
I'm in trouble. All right, enough of us talking. Enough of us talking. Let's hand it over to the conversation we had with Natalie. Again, if you guys are interested in what you hear here on the podcast, hit that subscribe button, whether it's YouTube, iTunes, Spotify. Fitnessinformant.com is our website. Fit Brothers is obviously our food company. And then, listen to Natalie. And if this is something that piques your interest and you're into, give her a follow. Check out her new website, her new coaching platform that she just launched, and dive into it, because I encourage everybody to find a realm of fitness in which they're comfortable and happy in, and this could definitely be it for you.
Adding my product is going to help you get to where you want to be.
5%ers is 5% of the people in the world that are willing to do whatever it takes to reach their goals. Come on, we're talking about business, success, education, willing to do whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Cage was born of a need for premium, health-focused products that actually work. We help you lift heavier, run faster, live healthier, and achieve your potential. You deserve to trust a company that doesn't cut corners, one that sources the highest quality ingredients. Welcome to Caged.
A lot of times we will start these podcasts and we'll like introduce the guest and all that stuff, but I'm just jealous because you're in Vegas and we're in Minneapolis and it's like 20 degrees here. So, I mean, you're a transplant to Vegas. How has it been for you?
It's been amazing. It's so warm. Funny enough, I'm actually coming to Minneapolis tomorrow morning.
Why?
So I'll be getting a dose of cold too, but it's been so nice being warm out here. And one thing I've been really, really loving is all the stuff you can drive to. In the Midwest, like there's not a lot of like day trips you can do once you've done like Chicago and Duluth from, Minneapolis, but you can drive tons of different places, tons of national parks, state parks, like California, LA's a lot hours away. So that part has been really enjoyable for me.
Do you miss anything about Minnesota? I mean, I suppose you miss a lot probably, but you also have a lot of benefits being in Vegas.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, friends and the lifting community in Minneapolis, I do miss that a lot. My family, of course, too. I am right now not at all missing the snow, even though I'll be up there tomorrow. There was a tiny little snowstorm here, which was kind of funny. It was like it lasted like 2 hours, and it really came down for a while. There was a little accumulation, but it was gone like a half hour after it stopped. Basically, it was great. That's the ideal snowstorm. It was beautiful and warm.
You mentioned the lifting community here. I'm always interested, like, for obviously you both being female and like traditionally, like growing up, like bodybuilding and weightlifting and powerlifting, it was a man's world. So like, explain your experience. Like, how did you fall in love with Olympic lifting and weightlifting in general versus like just being another pretty face playing another sport that necessarily doesn't require strength and conditioning in that sense?
It is kind of an unusual thing to be like a woman in this industry for sure. I started way back in high school. So my athletic background is a little unusual. I did ballet for a lot of my years, like middle school, high school time. I did it a little bit in college and pretty much quit after that. But I was very unathletic. Like throwing and catching, all of those types of sports were really hard for me. Looking back, I actually think my eyes didn't track objects very well, and so I couldn't see where they were in space to catch them, throw them. But regardless, I didn't really enjoy SIED and those kinds of things. But when I got to high school, we had a mandatory lifting day, and I found that in the gym, they just took you through the basic exercises basically back in high school. I found that all you needed essentially was good form and a lot of like grit, which I had. And so I really enjoyed the process of getting stronger, seeing the weights go up each week, the soreness and feeling like, ooh, I did something yesterday. But this was back, very, very, like a long time before there was a lot of internet resources, before there were a lot of women who were in that space that I could look on Instagram and be like, wow, like, I want to look like that. I just did it because I really liked lifting weights. And I even very vividly remember sitting on a seated lat row machine, and some young high school dumb kid comes up to me and goes, you're the only girl in here. And there was a big room, lots of people. And I did look around and like, yeah, I just kind of was like, yeah, duh, was kind of my reaction because, of course, you look around and, of course, it's the case. But it's been amazing to see how many more women are just into lifting weights. And so basically I found like just weight training was really great. And I did that for a few years. But the summer before my senior year of high school, they showed us what a hang power clean was. And I loved the idea of there's just kind of this beauty and physics behind it. Like you need to lift it up as high as it can go. I must have been like studying physics at the time because I was fascinated that an object, comes to rest before it starts to fall, or like, velocity of zero before it starts to fall. And in that moment, you have to go under the bar and then be strong under it. It was like the whole thing. I was just like in love since then. And eventually I just kind of found a team, found like coaches, and that was a long process to do, but that was pretty much the start. Was unathletic, and I just, found that I love lifting weights.
When was your first actual organized competition?
It was a while after I started lifting weights in general. I was in college, about 2008 was my first actual competition. But I was peer pressured into it. So at this point, I had loved weightlifting and training and just I thought I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. So I was able to be an intern at the University of Minnesota for my whole like college career. That's awesome. And learned just a ton of things there. But the other strength staff, they were like, you love this, like you're training this every day, like there's like lots of local meets here, like you have to do one. And so one of the other interns had enough experience with weightlifting that there's sort of a process of any kind of competition that you just go in blind, you won't have any idea what to do. And I didn't have a coach. I'm just like, doing what I think might work best, so far. So I didn't know what to do. And anyway, he helped me out with that first competition. And then I actually had to be peer pressured into a second one. And then my coach, who coached me most of my career, kind of like recruited me, like asked me to come train with the girls. And after that, I like had an actual team. I had 2 coaches, and so that's how the rest of the history kind of went.
Was it? I guess at that point you're getting recruited, and you're being what's the word I'm looking for? Like you're being injected into this new world, this new culture, and there's more women doing it. Were you surprised then at that point, like how many women were like you that loved doing this, and they loved doing it because it was just what they were passionate about?
When I first started, this was about 2008 or so, 2009 when I founded the team. there were some women. We definitely had a strong women's team, but we still kind of were. This was back before CrossFit made weightlifting cool, and so it was kind of a band of, a little bit odd people. You have to be a little bit, you have to kind of off the beaten track to like find like a weightlifting gym back then. Like weightlifting, even equipment, like you can go into like Lifetime Fitnesses and there's Olympic lifting platforms and bumper plates. And that was not the case when I started. So there were more women. It was cool to like have a team for sure. And definitely nowadays there's tons more women and that's like amazing. But definitely when I started at first, it was just, it was more or less 50-50, I guess, but we did have a strong like women's team, but it was a lot about finding like just, the support of, other people was a big guidance. And, because the Olympic lifts are so complicated that like if you're learning alone, which I did for the first couple of years, it's really hard to know what you're messing up. It's you have bad training days and like who you talk to about that because, it's just good to have teammates and coaches kind of guide you through that whole process. That makes a big difference, I think. So.
You mentioned CrossFit making weightlifting cool, which I think is great. I think CrossFit gets a bad rap from a lot of people because people look at form and things of that nature, but it really brought a collective group of people together and made them active and made them healthier.
Community.
How would you describe the difference between bodybuilding, Olympic lifting, CrossFit, and even powerlifting, I guess, in that realm? So you have 4 different kind of like avenues that somebody could go, like in your experience, and I'm not sure you have a ton of experience with bodybuilding per se, but you've dabbled in a lot of different things. Obviously, Arya, our friend, your boyfriend, you're his better half. More of a bodybuilder, right? But like, how would you describe the 4 different realms of strength training?
Oh, good question. Well, I do a little bit of bodybuilding, but it's more of like helping out my joints. And I think it really, like the older I get, the more that's like a really important part of my training. It takes up more of my training actually. And kind of just getting back to just liking to lift weights until you can't. Just different kind of vibe. I get a different soreness and like body effect after the different types of sessions that I'd have. If I just do a bodybuilding workout, you get that pump. But if you do an Olympic lifting workout, you get this like deep tired or you can just like kind of tell deep in your body that you really worked on something. Maybe it's like your nervous system. It must be. I don't know. And CrossFit, I've coached it for a long time because a lot of local CrossFit gyms will need Olympic lifting help, but it's never really been my vibe. I think maybe if I'd found it first, I would have loved it the most because it's very fitnessy. It's, competition driven. There's still the Olympic lifting element, but it wasn't really around when I started. So by the time I knew what weightlifting was, that was done. But I think CrossFit is amazing because it does have a really good community and different gyms have different types of communities. Like, so there are some amazing CrossFit gyms with great coaches and you can come in as somebody who's new and feel welcomed and well coached. But class size in a lot of places can get to be an issue. Like if you have somebody who's never touched a weight before and you're snatching that day for the workout, as a coach, that's an impossible bridge to gap, successfully. Even the best coach would have a hard time doing that, especially when there's other people around, or to need coaching and guidance. So those, and then powerlifting is, amazing. We, when I was in Minneapolis for a long time, we trained with in a powerlifting gym. And, it is really different. We lift in kilos, they lift in pounds. We're sort of like very different. I think maybe, and we kind of compete in the same way. Like, you have the lifts, you're trying to get the absolute most in your attempts. You have 3 attempts and try to lift the most. So there's similarities between bodybuilding and, powerlifting and weightlifting for sure. But the culture is a little bit just different, I think. Yeah. But it's all amazing, to be honest. And I love it all.
So you're obviously well accomplished. So let's let you toot your own horn for a second here. Do you want to go down the list of accomplishments that you had in weightlifting? Like you've held state records, I believe, right? Like, I mean, pretty big deal. So I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah. I've been lifting for 17 years and I'm still doing it as hard as I can. And to be honest, I think that's a bit of an accomplishment because, and that's Olympic lifting. I was lifting a little before that, because a lot of lifters that I knew that were really good around the time I was at my best don't really train much anymore, at least from what I can tell from what's posted online. Maybe I'm just not ashamed to post that I'm like lifting less than I used to at this current moment. But I think longevity is like been an accomplishment of mine. So I've never like won the national championships. I've competed internationally. I've trained internationally. I got to train at the Olympic Training Center. I did hold state records for a time. I got to compete in Israel at the University World Championships. I've been all over, but I do really, truly feel like longevity and like still loving the sport a lot has been an accomplishment, because a lot of people have about 10 years where they really go at it and then just kind of move on with life. Because weightlifting is pretty consuming if you're going to be Olympic lifting, that is. And I think just people, have families, move on and just prioritize things differently as they go. But I've just loved it so much that I just keep it, in my life as much as possible, for sure.
When was the last time you competed? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I forgot of one that I'm also super proud of. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
I was inducted into the Minnesota Weightlifting Hall of Fame, which was very special. It was my coach, who has since passed away. He was the chair of like the committee. He nominated me as soon as he could. You had to be in the sport for 10 years, and I didn't know that until well after. And it was like the competition of my 10-year anniversary that they all as a group decided to like do that. So that was very special. That's probably one of my more proud achievements, for sure, because it's like a recognition of like the local community that I like made an impact on the sport. And when you're not like, winning state championships all the time, it's like good to look back and have that. And that's another thing I guess I won 13 state championships in a row in Minnesota.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
When was the last time you competed?
The last time I competed was our state championship in Minnesota, even though I've since moved out to Las Vegas. Like I mentioned, my coach has passed away.
Yes.
And so it was his memorial meet, which was wonderful because everybody felt that big loss. He was a big part of our community. But it was hard to do, for sure. And then between moving out here, trying to find a spot to train and get into this new rhythm of life out here in Las Vegas, I haven't found a competition I'm going to do for sure yet. Mm-hmm. But I'm back to training regularly enough where I need like maybe a couple months, maybe 3 months or so to like see what I feel out where I'm at and just like what my body could do in a max attempt or whatever. And then kind of pick a date on the calendar. What something that's close enough by that I've qualified for that, I'm going to do. But I definitely want to return for sure. And I'm finally making steps getting closer to that. So maybe over the summer would be, a hope for me.
For sure. And do you have like I don't know, I know you said you had a community up here. Have you like researched and tried to find like a family down there for training with? Or I know you train in your garage right now, which I mean, we see a lot of videos and everything of that. But I know like when we were down there visiting, you talked about like trying to find a gym and like having that vibe. Like if you found anything or like tried finding a different gym with the community that you would feel like you could resonate with?
I have not. The local gym that we go to also have my garage on like nice days. The local gym that I go to does have like equipment. It only has men's bars, they're thicker than women's bars, and it sounds like a snobby thing, but it does make a difference.
Yes, for sure.
I didn't know that, so good call out.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea.
Our hands are really little, and so our bar is 15 kilos, and it's like skinnier, and so it's easier to grab. So it hurts the grip less. It's like, so that all that is great. But then also in the jerk, like the bar whip is different because it's so skinny, like, and the way that the ends of the bar kind of makes a difference in the rhythm. At least I find it does. So anyway, between those two, I've been, able to train well enough. There definitely are amazing gyms around in Las Vegas, but I haven't really checked them out yet because I'm kind of like mourning losing that weightlifting family a little bit still in Minnesota. And so like eventually when I get to be in good enough shape too, and when I need like other, like kind of that moral support that I described earlier when I first found my original team, when I kind of feel like I need that again, I'll definitely go back and like, okay, like I need somebody to be watching and kind of cheering for me instead of just people going about their business and doing their workouts or just being alone in the gym and having my dog, cheer me on. Not quite.
You mentioned mourning the team from Minnesota. That's one part, right? But then ultimately finding a new coach. I think that probably is going to be very difficult because you were so close with your old coach. Obviously, you won championship after championship after championship. and your experience, but I think everybody does better when they have somebody there pushing them, holding them accountable, right? So like, what's the process for you to find a new coach in the niche of Olympic lifting and weightlifting that you can trust?
Yeah, it would be very difficult if I hadn't kind of thought of this problem sooner. So my coaches, Charlie and Roger, were both older gentlemen when I met them. And so Charlie's still with us, but he's in Minnesota and is not making it to the gym as much these days anyway. So he's still around. But so I knew that eventually this would be an issue because I just loved weightlifting so much. They're older gentlemen, just kind of life might happen. And so when Arya actually moved down, he signed with WWE. He moved down to Orlando for a year. I visited during the summer, and I trained at a gym and his name is Danny Camargo. He runs a gym called Oli Concepts. Had made some really great lifters at that point. I had known him for years through the national scene of Olympic lifting. They always come in like looking good, and they're like blue, like I could just like tell. Like I just remember them. Their lifting was beautiful from their team always. Like any like Oli Concepts lifter, like their snatches like are out. They have a distinct look, and that coach is actually much younger. He's like maybe 10 or so years older than me, but he was around also back in the olden days of weightlifting, like the pre-CrossFit days. And culture-wise, that's a little important to me because there is still a difference between CrossFit and weightlifting culture-wise. And because I'm like an old school weightlifter before the CrossFit days, kind of wanted somebody who really understood that part and just was more experienced than me. And he was a more accomplished lifter than I was in his junior years, and has been an amazing coach, has coached people to like world championships and lots of, things. So anyway, trained with him for that summer. And I was like, this is going really well. And I know he does remote coaching. And so I was like, I have liked the program. I've loved his coaching. And, I asked my coach, Roger, who's passed away, that would it be okay if I get the programming from him? And if I do have a video that I need like some help with, or I'm just snatches are off, I can't figure it out, that we also like have him help us. And like, can I send him videos? And it's kind of courtesy to like ask your coach that instead of like making that it's like a poaching situation. It's like, oh, he's just taking me as his athlete. And I've still never lifted for Oli Concepts. I've always lifted for Team Minnesota out of respect for my original coaches. Someday that might change because he's still coaching me. Still writes my programs. If I have a video that I'm like, things are feeling off, I can send it to him and he'll give, feedback. So luckily I had thought of that problem beforehand. And, but it would be very tricky otherwise. There's, only a couple people in the weightlifting community. Lots of people are so knowledgeable, but I feel like I would only be able to accept like real coaching and real feedback rather than, what do you know? Which is probably says, more about me and the attitude that I've got to work on. But only a couple people that I would really respect their opinion and go, oh, okay, like if you say that that's the issue, like totally trust you. And I feel like that's the kind of relationship you should have with a coach.
For sure. And I know you coach. Do you coach like people within Olympic lifting, or do you kind of go out of that realm more with like, traditional bodylifting and, nutrition and all the other realms?
I do a mix of both for sure. Because, that's how a lot of people find weightlifting. They don't necessarily see a snatch and be like, I could totally do that if you've never been in the gym before. So you do kind of have to like get people in, with like the easier stuff, the slightly less complicated stuff, which can be really complicated when you're a beginner. Like, but I do coaching. So I coach in person here in Las Vegas at a gym called Smash Iron Fitness. And I've had people who are more interested in their, physique and doing that traditional kind of lifting. And I've had people they're like, oh, you're the weightlifting person. I want to come learn how to do weightlifting. Or I learned weightlifting at CrossFit, but I want to see, what you think. Because, there'll be some things that I would see that, CrossFit coaches might not be aware of because it's still new to that kind of world. And I also coach remotely. So I have quite a few athletes who had lifters in Dubai and in England and all over the world. But basically the same thing that I do with my coach in Orlando. I'll send the program and I write in cues of what they need to think of even in the lift. So if they're snatching, remember to like keep the bar close and, easy off the floor and fast speed, right? Whatever I, think that lifter needs in the program. They'll do the program, send me back videos, and we kind of talk that way. So it's nowadays that's very common to do after the COVID times happened. So that's been really fun. It's really also cool to like just coach somebody from a computer, literally the opposite time zone, like 12 hours difference in Dubai. Like that's really a cool thing to be able to do. So if you aren't like local to Las Vegas, I can still coach you through weightlifting.
I'm asking really ignorant fucking question because I don't know. Like, so you mentioned like the snatches, right? And then I think clean and jerk. Like, what are the Olympic lifts? Like, what are the core lifts to traditional weightlifting or Olympic lifting?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and not a lot of people know. And a lot of people use the term weightlifting as one word to describe weight-based lifting of weights. And they are different. Weightlifting describes like our sport, whereas powerlifting would describe powerlifting and so on. But our lifts are the snatch and the clean and jerk.
Just those two. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we compete, powerlifters have their bench,
SBD.
deadlift, and squat. Exactly. And so they all have the 3 attempts to get their best number in those lifts. We just have 2 lifts. We did used to also have the clean and press, but the competitions would just drag on, and eventually it was voted internationally that we're going to cut that lift from everything. But thank goodness they did, because my press is just terrible. It would be bad. I would never do well in weightlifting. But we just have our snatch and clean and jerk, but we do a lot of pulling quickly, snatch, pull, clean, pull. There's different styles of jerks. You can do things from the hang, where you stand all the way up at the bar and then kind of start at the knee area instead of starting off the floor. So there's lots of kind of variations of the 2 main competition lifts. And then of course we also use squats and deadlifts to get just like strong, because there's phases of both of the lifts where that would, be super duper helpful. So we front squat, back squat, overhead squat. That's what the training looks like. So it's very like every day in weightlifting is leg day and back day, pretty much.
Yeah, no kidding.
Which is amazing.
So the snatch is the over the head, right? Snatch is the one where you put the bar over the head, where you're like you're splitting your legs, and it looks like you're gonna break your fucking back every time you do it. And then the clean jerk is when you kind of like just bring up to your chin, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
How,
Yep. Check. It's like a front squat, like your front rack.
Yeah, like
yep. And then it has to go overhead though. If you don't lock it out, there's lots of rules about how that process is, but the lift isn't good at the very end when they say to put it down. If anything of all the things that went wrong, went wrong, like they might not count as the lift. But you have to finish it all the way. But clean and jerk, you have to do the jerk part to make it count.
Was ever the goal for you the Olympics? Like, was that ever in the realm of thinking?
I definitely thought about it when I was younger, especially when I had been invited to train at the Olympic Training Center. And that was around the time that I had competed internationally for the first time in Israel, took 5th, at the, University Worlds. Then I kind of thought, and I still felt like my potential was untapped. I'd only been training for a little while. At that point, I was still in, younger 20s era. I might have been younger than that. Anyway, it's been a minute. But it's, I tried and trained pretty hard, but it eventually I sort of always think I knew that my biggest impact would be through being an ambassador to the sport. I think deep down, like even back then when I was like, ooh, Olympics, because I think a lot of lifters, if you do an Olympic sport, I think, and you get good enough, eventually you have a moment of thinking, what if? And like, I think that's a pretty natural thing to do. But I think deep down, I always knew that I could try to make weightlifting a more friendly place for people to come and, try to lift barbells and try to get women specifically involved, because I have a look that's not like as intimidating to don't look like a man. I've been lifting weights as hard as I can for like almost 2 decades, and I still don't look like a guy, So like, I feel like I'm a good ambassador for that, for the sport. So I think I always knew that was where my purpose would be.
Talk about, because you mentioned both your coaches were male or are male. How many female coaches are there in the grand scheme of things?
Not a lot. I would say, there aren't a whole lot of weightlifting coaches in general.
Sure.
It's still kind of an unusual sport as it is. I would be interested to see a statistic about it, but I would guess 25% would be kind of the number that would come to my mind. But that would be a total guess based on just like people that I know and guessing, but not a whole lot. It's unusual to have, but I think there's been a lot of people who really enjoy it a lot. I have a lot of male lifters as athletes of mine who enjoy, a female coach because I think they think that I'm less likely to go, okay, we're going to max out, and, when they're not ready to. Like, I'll be a little bit maybe more methodical. Like, when you're ready, when it's safe, like, then we'll, be going up. And I think, a lot of my, men lifters really enjoy that.
I'm curious because, like, in the world of bodybuilding, nutrition plays such a big key, right? To get your physique ready for show day. That's the hard part, they say. The weightlifting's the easy. When it comes to Olympic lifting, like, how much of it is strength? How much of it is mental, like thinking about these things like you were mentioning before through the process of the lift? And then how much of it actually comes down to nutrition?
Great question. Wow, that's hard to say because, first of all, I really wish I had more nutrition knowledge earlier in my career. So I'm a little jealous of young lifters these days because they'll be able to start their careers with that being very talked about and lots of knowledge spread on the internet. And I think we're about to see how much nutrition makes a difference in weightlifting, basically, with this generation of lifters. And I think the answer is going to be a lot for that. Because we do compete in a weight class sport, right? So there's a component of weight. Some people have to really cut weight or do cut weight a lot for competitions. But it's, I think that's like where its biggest role is. And how much is mental? It would be definitely a lot when you're competing, for sure. I think when you're, and it's funny because you can't get so hyped up. You can't get like so crazy, like out of your mind, like amped up that you just go rip the bar because your timing is going to be off. Weightlifting is a lot like, I've heard it compared to, I don't know golf firsthand, but I've heard it compared to like a golf swing, that it's very technical. Your timing has to be right. So if you go up all crazy for like a golf swing, you're like, I'm going to hit the heck out of the ball, just like, that's not really going to be helping you. So you need to kind of get a balance of that. And that takes some experience. And a lot of lifters, definitely I've done this too, get in their head about the weight on the bar, especially because our weights have colors. When there's like a new color on the end of the bar, it's like extra intimidating because you know what that means. You've never lifted it before. So when you're pushing your personal best, I think it's 100% mental, actually. I think that's the biggest component. And then, but you do have to be strong. You can't just like mentally lift the weight. So you do but so like there's a whole balance, and the technique does make a lot of a difference as well. So when your technique improves, it's not like you're stronger automatically, but it just makes it easier to lift the weights that you're already doing. So efficient. It makes you efficient, which we want.
So I'm going to talk about something a little taboo, but it's a real thing. Like bodybuilding, we know drug use is rampant. Like we know there's tested and untested organizations in bodybuilding, powerlifting, same thing. With Olympic lifting, are there tested and untested organizations?
No, not really. There's been a couple attempts to try to start like a non-international league. But because we're an Olympic sport, our sport is run by the International Weightlifting Federation. So all the things kind of come top down to all the different, and then it goes to the country. So then the next level is USA weightlifting. And so it's a drug tested sport, or it's always been a challenge, obviously, in weightlifting to keep the sport clean. But the attempt is, and the intent is to keep the sport as clean as possible. And our US lifters are tested a whole lot more than lifters in other countries regularly. So yeah, so it's an issue. And then I think, every 10-ish years or so, there's an attempt to clean up the sport and say, okay, we're going to change all the weight classes, new start for everybody. And like, these are going to be fresh, like weight classes. And they did that a couple years ago. And so there's always efforts to clean up the sport. Like in a lot of other sports, I think that it's just the effect of drugs is a little bit more obvious in a sport than like skill-based, like football or,
Do you guys follow the WADA policy then, like the World Anti-Doping Agency? Is that like the list of supplements or ingredients and drugs that you are not allowed to take, and that's what they test for?
Yes, correct.
Wow, that's awesome. It's really cool. In my head, I'm thinking like you guys are strong as shit without the use of drugs. Like that's awesome. Great, because I just look at like powerlifters are strongmen, and obviously they're eating a bunch of calories, but like there's a difference, and I'm on TRT. I know I'm stronger because of my TRT usage. It's clear as day, right? Yeah. Like I would not be this strong without it. So it's impressive, like the fact that some of you people are putting up some fucking astronomical numbers in weight. And I'm like, how is that? Like I can't even do that with drug use. Like how is this going to happen? Which is insane. What is left? Like, what do you want your like legacy to be as we round out the podcast? And like, where do you want to go with this career? Because at some point you're probably going to want to do the family thing or whatever you and Ari decide to do. And like, do you always want to be involved in it and always, because I mean, your coaches were elderly, right? I mean, what's your goal and legacy that you want to leave behind?
I would like to bring as many people into the sport as possible. It's changed my life so to the core for like the better that I want to bring that change to other people's lives. Before I was a coach and when I was in Minnesota, I taught for 10 years. And funny enough, I did teach Phi-Ed, even though I was bad at all sports growing up. I wanted to even tell my students that like, I want you to find something that you really love to do exercise-wise that can keep you healthy and happy. Because I just knew how much weightlifting specifically changed my life like that. Mm-hmm. But now I'm just doing the same thing, but a little bit more niched down, if you would, or could say that. I just want to, show people that weightlifting just makes your life better. And specifically Olympic lifting, because that's my like passion within the passion of lifting weights. But just, to get as many people into the gym as possible. Even when I think about the older people who I know who are the fittest, happiest, and healthiest older folks, they all have like lifted weights or are continue to like prioritize their health. So I think that's important too for all generations. So my answer to that would be like, I'll be doing this for a long time. Long time.
Is a goal of yours to eventually have like a little girl and be like, hey, like girls can do all this stuff too, or a boy or whatever it might be? Like, is that in the cards for you guys?
We'll see. You can talk to Ari about that.
I'll talk to Ari about that. I'm asking you, do you want children?
We'll see how things go for sure. But if I don't have little kids or little girls, definitely I want one of my good close friends to, or my brother and his new wife to like have some kids, and I'll be passing on that message to somebody who's tiny for sure. For sure. Because I still do love kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great. Well, plug your socials so people can find you, and if people are interested in coaching, obviously they can reach out to you as well. So do you want to plug where they can find you?
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm Nat Joyfully. So Natalie, like Nat Dim Joyfully. Joy is my middle name on Instagram and TikTok. And joyfullyweightlifting.com is my new website that's just up like super recently. So
let's go. That's awesome.
I love it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, thank you this was great for me because I honestly didn't know shit about Olympic lifting.
It's funny because like my sister and I both started in bodybuilding, and my sister is now a power lifter. And so I've learned a lot through her. She actually does kilos too, and she talks about kilos nonstop. So when you said that you do pounds, I was like, wait, I'm confused. But no, it's cool to see like the different areas, because like obviously I'm not into powerlifting either. So I always love hearing like CrossFit differences, and like when he asked the lifts for Olympic, I had no idea either. Like I knew that the jerks and stuff were in it, but I thought you guys did more with the SBD as well. So it's interesting to hear all the different, differences between the different type of workouts, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But anyway.
We appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. I would love to come on and talk about weightlifting and tell people what the snatch and clean and jerk are. Because, I mean, if you guys are experts, and you guys are, like, true experts, like, you guys don't like fully know, like, definitely I have my work cut out for me. I got to get more people into the sport,